Hi YouTube, I hope you enjoy the video. If you do enjoy the video, please leave a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my new content. Let's do this Joe Rogan video.
The
Let's see
Joe
what's up.
Rogan
Let's see
experience.
what's up
We
with
were talking
this.
today, or yesterday rather,
Oh
with
yeah, were
Russell
you,
Peters
Joe?
about when was the last time you saw a good comedy movie, and can you make a good comedy movie anymore, or have they made it so dangerous in terms of like being canceled that comedy movies are no longer something you can do?
There's a movie called, I think it's called The Overnighters. I might need to double check on that. The guy,
Let's. What are like recent comedy movies? I'm trying to think of some movies that are really funny that have come out recently. Oh, Good Boys was really good. That one was hilarious. Oh, the new Borat movie? Like that hilarious. Look, Borat is a character that would typically be looked at as offensive. And if a lot of conservatives or reactionaries were to do a character like that, it would be. But Sacha Baron Cohen is built different. And by that, I mean he used that caricature to make fun of conservatives, to make fun of reactionaries, because they would typically make fun of that caricature and they would use that to be racially insensitive. But instead, he uses it to point out a lot of issues in our society and the differences and the different ways that we treat people. It's such a good take on our society. And the recent one talks about a lot more politics than the first one did. And he has a lot of really interesting things to do. And, it was incredibly funny. I also think movies like Super Bad, which is what they use in the thumbnail for this, could be released today and would be very funny. Like, it's not that you can't be funny, it's that it's no longer accepted to just be downright hateful. You can say some sort of racially insensitive things while still not crossing the line to where you're hurting other people. Like Borat. Like on the surface, what he was doing, it could be seen as racially insensitive. But the message behind it and the delivery was super important, and it isn't. Yeah, let's move on.
I think his name's Adam Scott. Is that a guy, a comic actor? And then who's the guy from Rushmore? Who's great? Jason Schwartzman. It's Jason Schwartzman and Adam Scott. I think it's called The Overnighters, and it's fucking hilarious.
And how long ago did it come out?
I might need a check on that too. Maybe 5 years ago,
Yeah,
4 years
that's
ago.
about the cutoff.
It's a really like low budget, all in one place movie, and it's like hysterical. I think.
I would wonder, like, what is the cutoff in terms of like when was the last time a really good
The Overnight.
The Overnight?
Is that
2015.
it? Yeah.
Like, when was the last time there was like an
You
edgy
can-
comedy?
This one's not edgy, but
But it's good.
Again, this dude just made the same point I made, basically. He's just pointed out there's a funny movie that isn't necessarily edgy comedy. Like, you also don't have to push the bounds of societal acceptance to be funny. There are a lot of things that you can say and do that are extraordinarily funny that aren't even close to the edge of societal unacceptance.
Good.
I mean, I guess there's some. It depends on what edgy means. So many different things to different people, but it's really fucking funny.
You know what I watched the other day? Super Bad.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Holy shit. You could never make that movie today.
It's amazing
Why,
how many
Joe?
things just a few years later. I mean,
Yeah.
the new Borat I thought was pretty funny.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but that's a weird
I swear I didn't watch this video.
one, right? Like, he figured out a loophole. You're kind of doing parody, and you're doing this thing where you're freaking people out, like when she has her period at the dance off.
Right.
You know, like there's things that he could get away with in that. It's a beautiful genre in that regard, right? You could do stuff in a kind of parody movie that you can't do in a regular movie.
Yes. But don't you find there's never been? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, but that's
I feel like maybe I'm such a
kind of like explain the point of parody. Like when he had Robert Downey Jr. on, he talked about the Robert doing the blackface in Tropic Thunder. That's parody. That's why it was acceptable for him to do it, and there wasn't like a massive amount of backlash. It is because it's a parody, because it's shining a light on something that is disgraceful that happens in our country and showing you that it is disgraceful.
Comedy cunt that I'm like, don't you feel like there's not never been a ton of great comedy films? I feel like there's like a few a decade.
It's hard to do a movie like I watched Step Brothers the other night. It's another movie you could never do today.
Why?
I
You
think
could
it's
do that
hard
today.
to do those. Like some people just like Judd
There
Apatow's really
really
good at making
isn't
those kind of
much
movies, or
in
was
that
really
that
good.
is
I don't
like
know if he's made one of those kind of movies in a while, but
ridiculous.
those
Like I haven't seen Step Brothers in a while, but like it came out when like yeah, there was maybe things like sexism and racism used as punchlines to jokes, but you can just also make different jokes. And just because we've stopped looking at things that hurt people as okay doesn't mean like we just can't be funny anymore. There are a lot of stand-up specials like John Mulaney, for instance, doesn't have any like racist jokes or anything like that, even though he's been funny forever and he's still making stand-up specials that are very, very funny. Bo Burnham makes a ton of funny content, and it used to be that edgy stuff, but now he's talking about other thing that he's doing and how he even regrets a lot of the edgy stuff that he did because he didn't understand that it was hurtful to those people. Joe's completely missing everything that's going on with the situation that he's talking about. People aren't making edgy and like humor that is meant to belittle and hurt people because it's meant to belittle and hurt people. Like just stop making those kinds of jokes. Like there's no reason to be hurtful, and because other people don't think it's okay to be hurtful doesn't mean like people are after you or something like that. Like society changes, and we have just as a society decided that our limits on the things that you can say stop when they start being harmful to communities.
really ridiculous, over the top movies, but the language and the subject matter. It's like the stuff that they talk about and say to each other. I just
Like
don't
what?
think you can do that
Quit talking
today.
about
Or
this in
if
the
you did do
abstract.
that, you would face a tremendous amount of criticism. Even though most people agree. Like if you try to watch Step Brother today, fucking rock solid funny movie, man. Really funny.
Right.
I was crying. Like crying, laughing. There's some really funny moments in that movie where you're like, I forgot how good this is. When he rubs his balls all over the dude's drum set.
Right.
Like there's so
Nothing
many
wrong
of
with
these moments where you're
balls.
like, this is so crazy.
But it feels like now people are getting more comedy from podcasts and stand up than
Yeah.
movies because it's making like I watched the Oscars and like they didn't even make a joke. There was like zero jokes
Mm-hmm.
because everybody's so afraid to
Who
be
hosted
funny.
the Oscars this year?
I think there was no host. It was just like we just bring people up. I mean, they weren't even like attempting to do jokes. The only jokes were the voiceover lady that says like, "Stay tuned, coming up, Brad Pitt." I
Yeah.
swear to God, Brad Pitt's coming. That was like the only attempt at humor. It was like really
Well, when Kevin Hart didn't do it because
right.
they wanted him to apologize for jokes that were homophobic from many years ago. And he said, look, I'm not going to do this. I've already apologized for those jokes. I evolved. I grew. I'm not the same person anymore.
Uh, like what he's talking about is an issue that I think should be addressed. People change, and I think a lot of the policies that I think would benefit this country to be passed are based on the belief that people can change and that people can grow, and that given the right amount of help and the right resources and the right dignities, they are able to make their lives better. what he's talking about is an issue that is kind of, I want to say, like plagued the left, where there are just certain loud members of left-leaning communities that think that if you weren't born a complete leftist, whatever variety they are, and you weren't only saying those things, and if every word of your mouth has, if any word out of your mouth has ever been any sort of out of line, then you're done and you're a hateful person. That is wrong. Those people are wrong, and those people are dumb. But also, I think we should be more willing to take responsibility and apologize for the things that we have said. And if we said something in the past that is homophobic, you should be willing to apologize and be willing or have put in the work to not only better yourself to make sure that you don't that or that you understand why these things are upsetting and you don't make these mistakes again. You instead learn and actively help these communities and help these people deal with hatred from others, then you're doing your best to grow. And I think there's nothing else that you can do outside of that.
And that's fine. I don't need to do it. And then they didn't have a host that year, I believe. And I think that's it. I don't think they've had a host since then. Right? Am I right?
I don't know. You might be right about that. I know the one year
sure.
they had two. It was James Franco and Anne Hathaway hosted it.
Oh, okay.
Because they went non-comics. But it does feel like right now it's like rude to even try to be funny on that high level.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre. I was listening to a podcast the other day that I love that's sort of like a mental health podcast. And
I don't know. I also think there's kind of a lot of utility in not being like trying to be super funny at award shows. It's just a formal event. Everyone's dressed to the nines. You are trying to talk about maybe some serious stuff. I think there should be time for comedy, like obviously around like if they're giving awards to some funnier stuff, like sometimes a lot of the times like the animated stuff will also be on the funnier side of things. Um that you can make the jokes, and if there's something happen that's funny, you should be able to make the jokes. But generally, I think, you know, stay on topic. There's a focus of the night, and it's the award show, not necessarily a comedian having to write essentially a stand-up special for the Oscars or whatever.
this lady was telling the host, who's like a straight white guy, he was like, I'm learning about privilege. And he was saying, even my self-deprecating humor is a little bit offensive because it's my privilege to do self-deprecating humor because as a straight white male, people assume I'm joking, but other people couldn't make such jokes because of whatever history. And they were literally discussing earnestly how straight white men shouldn't really try to be funny.
Was that guy Castrato?
It felt a little
He might have
Castrato-y.
been. Yeah.
I mean, it was just a really bizarre conversation.
Again, like a lot of conservative talking points and reactionary points of view, you're looking at very incredibly small instances, individual instances of things happening, and generalizing it out to the larger society and the larger group of the left and things like that. And it's just wrong. Like, most people aren't like that. Most people aren't going to say that white men shouldn't be funny. But what I think is a very reasonable thing to say, and I think really the primary message behind what was trying to be said, was that, you know, you have to understand that white people have privileges in every facet of life. And I think that understanding that is really good, because then it allows us to even the playing fields. Because then we can start thinking about ways to remove these privileges, so where our society can be more equal and more equitable to everyone within it.
You can never be woke enough. That's the problem. It keeps going. It keeps
Right.
going further and further and further down the line. And if you get to the point where you capitulate, where you agree to all these demands, it'll eventually get to straight white men are not allowed to talk
Right.
because it's your privilege.
No, eventually it's going to get to straight white men no longer have privilege, which is super different and way scarier for the people that benefit the most from it. The capitalist class benefits the most from privilege in general, just because typically the most privilege comes from having money in our society. So those privileges are the foundation of the people who are in power. And you know, I I kind of understand what he's talking about, but it is definitely super slippery slope fallacy, like written everywhere. And like he doesn't understand that, yeah, there's a lot of things changing within our society because people are finally able to be their genuine selves and be open and honest with the society that they participate in, as well as these people are, gaining more attention because as more and more people become out open and honest, the general public becomes more and more interested in that. The average person now has more information about people who are trans or what anything else. So that like it it's not it's more that as people come out and as society as a whole becomes more aware of these things, the more people are willing to come out about the experiences that they're having. And yeah, sure, some things are really far. Like there was an instance of someone saying like they're transracial and there's a big deal about that. Like, yeah, there are going to be some people who are kind of just missing the point and doing things that aren't necessarily in line with the general movement. But I think discouraging people from being woke and discouraging people from learning about the society that we live in and the different types of people that there are within our society is really dumb. And I think it is as close to promoting bigotry as you can get without directly doing it.
To express yourself when other people of color have been silenced throughout history. It will be you're not allowed to go outside because so many people were imprisoned for so many years. I mean, I'm not joking.
No, I know.
It's
It
not
really
gonna
will
get
get there.
It
It's
won't.
that crazy. You
Yeah.
know, we just got to be nice to each other, man. And there's a lot of people that are taking advantage of this weirdness in our culture, and then that becomes their thing. Their thing is calling people out for their privilege, calling people out for their position. You know, it's fucking crazy times.
Yeah, most definitely. But I do feel like there's more. It feels like I hear more people sort of speaking out against that kind of stuff than I hear from people saying that's a good.
Words right out of my mouth. That was absolutely beautiful. Like, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, not only is everyone on the right whining about, like, we're being silenced, even though they are, like, Tucker Carlson, I'm being silenced, is also the most watched news broadcast in America. Like, these people aren't being silenced. Nobody's going to start throwing you in jail because you're white. What is happening, though, is that the systems of privilege that we have that are benefiting a lot of the people that are talking about this on the right are being dissolved. So, what they're trying to do is to get everyone, even those who aren't benefiting from those systems nearly as much, to get upset about the people removing those systems of power.
Idea. Like I think there's
Yeah.
way more people that are like, "What? That's insane."
Well,
than
especially
there-
in our circles.
True. Yeah, maybe I'm in a bubble. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely in a comedy bubble. I mean, this is what we do. We talk shit.
Right.
You know, when you talk shit and you see something stupid like that, like as a straight white man, I shouldn't be self-deprecating. Like, bitch.
Like, I didn't really talk about it when he first brought it up, but I think that the point that is being made when you are saying that you are expressing privilege by being self deprecating is because a lot of self deprecating humor can almost sound like complaining. And if you are looked at as a minority complaining about the situation you're in, like people are just going to paint you as like, oh, you're playing the race card or whatever. Like that is such a common thing that people like this and reactionary say to just try to dismiss somebody's genuine struggles that they're facing. It it's so bad when somebody who is so incredibly popular is willing to just be so disingenuous. There are so many left-leaning content creators that have massive followings that all say that cancel culture can and has gone too far in certain instances, and that, you know, people need to have paths to redemption. And yet he's just ignoring it because he has to make up some sort of hypocrisy on the left because that's the reactionary viewpoint. Like, he just has to be right. And again, like, you don't have to make jokes that are based in sexism and racism. It it's so easy for you to avoid that while also being self-deprecating. Again, recognizing your privilege is just a step towards reducing the overall amount of privilege and making a more equitable society.
The fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a lot of trouble if we can't do that. But
Yeah, we're humans. If you're a human being, you should be able to express yourself. You shouldn't have to take into account all the other people that are either not heard or not expressing themselves currently or not in the same, whatever category as you. Like, come on, man. We can't do that because that's what you're doing is you're forcing yourself to think double and triple about every single fucking thing you say. And
But the original point wasn't that like, oh, just because you have some privilege to do something means you shouldn't do it. That's not the original point. It's just pointing out a privilege that white people have and that, maybe we shouldn't, like, I don't know. It's so difficult for people like Joe to understand because their worldview is so centralized around themselves and around their own views that they already have. Again, they're just reacting to what they see. They are not changing the way that they think, and they're not going to. They're just going to keep the same line of thinking and react to what's going on around them. And change is going to always be bad, even if it is for a good purpose.
whether or not you have the right to say it, whether or not you have the right to express yourself.
yeah,
Again,
and
it's not
then
about having the right.
nobody's having fun. That
It's about having the privilege over somebody else and recognizing that privilege and then changing society to be more equitable.
doesn't seem like a fun way to live at all.
It's a terrible way to live. Catch new episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience.
But imagine being somebody who is silenced in a country. Imagine being a political dissident in an authoritarian country. Imagine being part of a marginalized group. Imagine, like, the. Uh, Imagine how much worse that is than you being told that you have privilege for doing something and that you have innate privileges in the society you live in. Like, I don't know. I feel like you have to be such a baby to equate like being discriminated against based on your race or gender or sexuality and being told that society treats you better. I don't know.